Hi, my name is Dr. Kimberly Vasquez, and today we're going to talk about acid reflux and digestion. First, I want to define a couple of things. Parasympathetic nervous system and sympathetic nervous system. These are going to be very important when talking about the stomach. The sympathetic nervous system, think of it as fight or flight, high energy, go, go, go. So when you're in this mode, the parasympathetic nervous system, which we're going to call it rest and digest, is unable to function properly. They do not function at the same time. You are either in rest and digest or you are in fight or flight. So now we need to kind of ask you, what kind of person are you? Fight or flight doesn't mean that the tiger is chasing after you. It could mean that you have a stressful diet. It means you have a stressful workload. You don't sleep well. All things can come into stress, which would be another video. But I can tell you that it does affect the stomach. What happens is that the stomach, when you're stressed, the parasympathetic is downregulated. What that means is the pumps that God made for you in the stomach can no longer produce enough hydrochloric acid to digest your food. So if you put a high protein meal or an extra large meal inside your stomach and you do not have enough hydrochloric acid to break those protein down into smaller pieces, that food tends to just sit there. And when food is sitting in a lukewarm, semi-acid environment and you start moving around, it tends to come up. And then when it comes up, there is some acid in that food, in that not properly digested food, and it's going to burn your esophagus. So when you take an antacid, whether it's a proton pump inhibitor prescribed by your medical doctor, or it's the Tums over the counter, or any type of antacid, that further inhibits your ability to break down those proteins so that when it goes down to the small intestine, then that can cause dysbiosis or leaky gut syndrome, which we talked about in a previous video. You can go back and watch that. We will talk about the other digestive organs in the body that actually help digest these proteins also, the pancreas. We will also talk about the gallbladder, which is primarily fat digestion. If any of these organ systems are not working well, then that affects the intestines and we can get leaky gut and then inflammation, and there we go. So first step of protein digestion is the biggest step is in the stomach. So we must make acid. So how can we fix this? For one, you can take an acid supplement, something like hydrochloric acid, or some people will tell me I can take apple cider vinegar and I feel like I can digest my food better. Well, what does that tell us? It means that they're low on acid. If you had enough acid in the first place, we wouldn't have to worry about that backflow of acid into the esophagus if the food actually went down. When the food is coming up, we have burn, and that is a problem. So let me make a suggestion. As someone weans themselves off of antacids, they will have sometimes what I call an overflow in acid because the gates have been held closed for so long. Sometimes it's what I call kind of a rebound effect. You get off the antacid or a proton pump inhibitor, and then your stomach pumps just release all this acid, and it's just too much acid, and it can burn the esophagus. So you can drink water, which neutralizes acid. You can also drink a little bit of baking soda in water. Baking soda is alkaline, which means it's the furthest away from acid, and it can help neutralize or balance out that acid that may be in the esophagus. So that might make your esophagus feel good for the minute. The other thing is you can take, again, more acid prior to your meal or right within the meal so that it helps digest the proteins to go down into your small intestine. The other thing that can affect this is just overeating. Maybe you're not stressed out, maybe your acid pumps are fine, but if you're overeating in one meal, what your pumps can actually produce to break down that food, then we're going to not be able to digest it fast enough. And if you start moving around too fast, then again, that food is going to come up. There are other problems that can happen. You can have a valve problem. There's a valve between the end of the esophagus and the stomach that is supposed to contain the food in your stomach. Again, you can overeat that, or you may have a valve dysfunction. If that is the case, then you need to focus on eating smaller meals and making sure you don't eat too close to bedtime. If you do eat too close to bedtime, gravity can assist food to go down, so you might want to sleep on an incline or a bed that inclines to make sure the food goes down. You definitely don't want to eat a heavy meal if you have a valve problem before you go to bed. And maybe consider hours before you go to bed not to eat that heavy meal. You ever notice when a kid eats a meal and within 30 minutes they can go run out and play because they probably haven't had enough stress less in their life yet to turn their pumps off. So aging process does tend to slow down the ability to make this acid to digest your food. So I can assure you that this is not the only problem that happens when you do not have enough acid in your stomach. Your stomach also makes something called intrinsic factor. Intrinsic factor is required for proper B12 absorption. If you do not have enough intrinsic factor, you will develop something called pernicious anemia as time goes on. For those of you who have a B12 deficiency, we might consider that your body does not make intrinsic factor. So yes, you can get B12 shots. Yes, you can take B12 with intrinsic factor, which is one of my solutions, at least initially, until we can get the pumps working again. But it doesn't fix maybe what's setting you up for the problem. The problem being maybe you're stuck on proton pump inhibitors, which are acid reducers or basically acid inhibitors. Or maybe your lifestyle is just too stressed. There are other conditions that I should mention. If someone has a condition called H. pylori or a bacterial infection in their stomach, it will eat at the lining of the stomach and cause an ulcer. This ulcer is not going to like acid at all. So those people tend to like to hang out with the antacids or proton pump inhibitors, still causing improper digestion. So the problem is H. pylori, then you need to address the H. pylori. There are strong antibiotics that will kill this bug, but that can cause problems further down in the digestive tract because it kills all your friendly flora. There's also a specialized form of zinc called Zinlori. What Zinlori does is it takes that bacteria that has this really thick protective cell wall around it, around this nasty bacteria, and it can eat through this wall of this bacteria. Now, what happens is when the wall can be penetrated, your acid could actually get to the bacteria insides and destroy it. But your acid can't destroy H. pylori because H. pylori has such a thick shell wall. So again, a specialized form of zinc can break down this cell wall. By the way, a deficiency in zinc is one of the reasons why we may not be producing enough stomach acid. Also, a B1 deficiency can cause the inability to produce enough stomach acid. B1 deficiencies also can be perpetuated by drinking a lot of alcohol. That tends to cause a B1 deficiency. So your diet is going to be really important in getting your pumps working properly. Decreasing your stress will get your pumps working properly. In the meantime, to have such not a rebound effect on getting off medications or over-the-counter things that help reduce acid, then you have to stick to smaller meals, eat proteins that are already pre-digested. I like to suggest collagen peptides or collagen proteins tend to be really easier on the stomach as long as they're already broken down into the smaller parts. So you don't need acid to break it down. It's already been broken down for you. And then just making sure that you get adequate sleep. So again, little treatment things that you can do. You know that if you're burping a lot, by the way, that's a signal that you have some sort of reflux, that things aren't being digested properly. It's usually a sign of low stomach acid. So if you can drink some apple cider vinegar and your burping decreases, or you take hydrochloric acid in some sort of pill form and you notice that your burping decreases, the problem isn't that you didn't have enough, that you had too much acid. The problem is that you did not have enough acid, which is the majority of the time. My patients who think that they have too much acid and they have acid reflux or heartburn, actually, I would say 80 to 90% of the time, the condition is fixed by adding more acid into the stomach. So until your stomach can actually make acid, then adding it to your stomach will have a really positive effect. Unless you have an ulcer. If you get a burning sensation when you do this, then we need to step back and think, okay, maybe I need to go to a doctor and find out, do I have H. pylori or an ulcer? And that needs to be addressed first. If you have an ulcer, certainly you do not want to continue to add acid on top of it. And then symptomatically, if you get a little burn or a little reflux going on when you're trying to get off this antacids, You can again do the baking soda and water trick and to kind of calm and soothe the esophagus, and also smaller meals. So I really hope this helped for those of you who have heartburn or acid reflux problems. We will again go into the digestive system a little bit further later on. And I have promised many of you videos on exercise and diets and eating right, and I promise those videos are in your future. So to the best of health and wealth, and have a very blessed day.